Update, brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300. Manx Radio's Update with Andy Wint.
Faster Mai, good evening, it's 5:30. This is Update for Monday, 6th of November 2023 from Manx Radio. 30 minutes to look at the latest news on the island. Background to that news, we got sport and business and Sea Watch, travel updates and the newsmakers in person. This evening, 35% of new residents leave within 5 years. Baroness Mone's acknowledged the PPE company link, concern over the inquest clause in the assisted dying bill. The Air Services review is out, and the hope for an Isle of Man cycling academy.
Man Benham for all your business and legal needs.
First of all, at 29 minutes ahead of 6 o'clock, the update news headlines. Faster Mai, Chanel Suku.
Faster Mai. A UK newspaper is reporting that Manx-based Conservative peer Michelle Mone and her husband have acknowledged their involvement with a company that was awarded PPE contracts by the UK government during the COVID pandemic. The couple have previously denied any association with the company PPE MedPro. Rob Collister has been appointed chair of the planning committee. He takes over the role from David Ashford, who's the chair of the Housing and Communities Board. And the police are holding a roadshow this evening at Site Matters in Onken from 6 p.m. Members of the public will be able to have an open conversation with officers about any problems with criminality or antisocial behaviour in their areas. In international news, British Steel's announced plans to close blast furnaces at its plant in Scunthorpe. The Chinese-owned company says the move is part of its plans to reduce carbon emissions and secure its long-term future. The UK Prime Minister is intending to bring in minimum service levels for rail, ambulance and border staff to stop unions derailing Christmas. He says the measures will keep vital services running if walkouts are called. And a spinal implant has helped a 63-year-old man with Parkinson's disease leave the house by himself again. It works by electrically stimulating the spinal cord. Those were your headlines. News at 6.
Man Benham. Contact us by phone, video call, email or face-to-face. We're happy to connect with you. Manx Radio Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Garamaya, thank you, Chanel. From the Ronaldsway Met Office, there is a strong wind warning in operation for the North Irish Sea. State of sea, slight or moderate. And your 3-day weather tonight, well, mostly dry with clear intervals. A fresh to strong wind coming in from the west and down to 9 through the night. Jamaica, Tuesday, scattered showers, a fresh to strong westerly. It will dry up and become less windy later in the day. Top temperature 12 degrees, and then after dark, more heavy rain on a strong southerly order. Overnight minimum 8 degrees. Wednesday, Jacrane, any rain should clear through the morning as the wind turns westerly up to 12 degrees. High water in about 20 minutes time. Low water 6 minutes after 1 a.m. High tide 17 minutes past 7 tomorrow morning. Sunrise is at 7:30. And look on the bright side, 7 weeks today, it's Christmas Day.
Visit the Manx Glass and Glazing website and see a range of products from windows to doors, mirrors to splashbacks. manxglass.com.
35% of new residents leave the Isle of Man within 5 years of getting here. That's from the latest population report published by the Cabinet Office. The report from Siobhan Fletcher.
Overall, the population of the Isle of Man grew by around 461 people to 84,530 in the period between the census in 2021 and the end of the first quarter of 2023. If accurate, this represents a return to population levels last seen in 2011. The report states there are relatively high levels of immigration into the Isle of Man. This is, however, tempered by high numbers of deaths on the island, resulting from a relatively aged resident population and a substantial degree of outward migration. Combined with a low birth rate, this results in a modest increase in population numbers. New residents to the island are on average younger than both current residents and those who leave the island. A noteworthy characteristic of new residents residents is that around 35% leave the island within 5 years of their arrival. The report states that it is possible that the reason behind this is largely or almost entirely due to opportunities for career advancement being much more widely available in the United Kingdom. If so, it says this would make the task of increasing the number of new residents who settle permanently a considerable challenge. The report concludes were net migration to continue at a pace similar to that in 2022, the population of the Isle of Man could be expected to reach approximately 92,000 by 2035 or 2036.
Manx-based Tory peer Michelle Mone and her husband have acknowledged their involvement with a company that was awarded PPE contracts by the UK government during the COVID pandemic for the first time. It's been reported in a UK newspaper. The story with Amy Griffiths.
PPE MedPro was given a £200 million contract by the UK government to provide protective equipment to healthcare staff during the pandemic, but is now being sued by them for the return of the £122 million it paid for surgical gowns that were found to be unsafe for use in the NHS. The company is defending the claim. It was also revealed that offers of PPE from companies with connections to the Conservative Party or government were fast-tracked. The Guardian is now reporting a representative of Baroness Mone and her husband Douglas Barrowman, who live on the Isle of Man, were both involved with the business. They've told the paper the UK government was fully aware of her involvement with PPE MedPro and said she acted as an intermediary or liaison between the company and the UK's Cabinet Office and Department of Health and Social Care. In addition, the paper is reporting Mr Barrowman, who runs the Knox Group here, was the chairman and leader of the PPE MedPro consortium and provided half the money required upfront through his family office, a part of the Knox firm that the Guardian understands is controlled by him and manages his private wealth. The paper says the representative claims the UK government was also fully aware from the start of Mr Barrowman's involvement and that his group would make a commercial profit. The couple have previously denied any involvement with the company.
The Isle of Man in 30 minutes. Update on Manx Radio with Andy Wint.
An Onken MHK says he's got serious concerns over some clauses within the assisted dying bill. Rob Callister will bring a motion to Keys tomorrow, hoping to establish a committee to scrutinise the proposed legislation. On Man in Line this lunchtime, he said he's especially worried about one clause regarding inquests.
If somebody accesses the assisted dying, how that would be recorded, how it may work within any inquest that's held, because according to Dr. Allinson, that if you are you about to die within 6 months and you access the assisted dying bill, if you then access this and take the assisted dying route, then the cause that you had originally, say for example cancer, would be the item that is recorded on your death certificate. What I'm seriously worried about, and what I'm trying to make sure I'm absolutely right for my constituents and for the people of this island, is that death certificate, even though it's recorded, it doesn't get challenged by an insurance company. I want to be absolutely sure that if somebody has a life insurance or somebody has a mortgage insurance policy, that suddenly we don't find a case on the Isle of Man where an insurance company has refused to pay out because the person has taken this route. And I want to be very clear on that. This isn't about me throwing this policy or this legislation into the long grass. This is about making sure that I'm protecting my constituents in Onken and the people of this island. Dr. Allinson has sent members a correspondence this morning on that from the British Association of Insurers, and I will mention that in a bit more detail tomorrow, Andy. What we've done differently here on the Isle of Man in respect of assisted dying, if we look at our colleagues in Jersey, they started with an e-petition in 2018. They then went on to a citizens' jury, and what they did is they brought everybody together, listened to all of the concerns, and only in 2024 are they going to start looking to draft legislation. That to me is the most important thing. What we've done is draft the legislation, and we're now trying to put everyone together in order to support the draft legislation as written.
There are hopes to create a new academy for the Isle of Man's next generation of cycling competitors. Isle of Man Cycling Development Officer Rob Holden believes it could be an important step forward.
I think we've got all the ingredients to offer a really good, sustainable cycling academy for under 19s, but I also think potentially for the under 23 category. What we want to deliver is we want to be able to give those riders that are riding through the youth league at Dots League on a Tuesday night, which has been so successful, we want for them to be able to see, girls and boys, to be able to see what's next. And I think we've had that in some respects, but like everything evolves a little bit, and we have to adapt to that. So I think hopefully we can have we have quite strong links to Isle of Man Sport Aid already, but I think it's about bringing it together in sort of an academy package. Possibly might not be able to get it to the place we want to for 2024, but I'd certainly like to think for 2025 we should be able to do that. It's the visibility of the academy and what a package looks like is not quite there yet. There's still some conversations to have with Isle of Man Sport Aid as well, so I don't want to jump the gun. You know, we're already speaking to the coaches to deliver race-ready days. The riders, some of our junior riders are riding for UK teams next year, but most of them aren't. But I'd still have that core group of riders to help get them ready for their junior years, which is, you know, completely different style of racing. So hopefully we can get them all in the right mindset, ready to go for the racing in 2024. I think we've got to recognise that everything evolves, and cycling has gone through a radical change. Pro cycling teams are now signing junior riders at 16, 17-year-olds with a view to them turning pro at 18, 19. When they come out of the junior ranks. It's not about these riders have to get to this level, it's about potentially what it takes to get to that level, and about getting the best out of what these riders are and making them, you know, helping them understand what they need to do to be ready and what to kind of expect.
Sea Watch with the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company.
Motor vessel Manxman left Heysham at 28 minutes after 2. She's should be back in the bay any time now. Onto the link span, arriving just after 6 o'clock. Tonight's departure 7:45, getting to Heysham at 11:30. The overnight departure's 2:15. Back to Douglas at 6 tomorrow morning. And Tuesday morning's departure 8:45. Motor vessel Manxman heads to Heysham.
Follow the Steam Packet on Twitter for the latest sailing information.
The Manx government's looking for a new provider to take over the running of overnight camping at Sulby Claddock after overnight camping, except during the TT, was banned because of increased running costs. The Environment Minister, Claire Barber, MHK, says she's been listening to the results of a public consultation.
The main thing that people had talked about was having some sort of community group, actually. And that's something we're quite open-minded as to how that might look. We know that there is interest from people within the community. We know there are people who potentially benefit from having the campsite there. And it may be that they want to come together and form something. It may be that's in conjunction with the local authority. We don't know. We're very open-minded. What we're looking for is people to come forward through that prior information notice to talk about what they might be able to offer. Equally, we're open-minded in talking about how we progress the infrastructure there. We know that there's the very well-documented challenges around the toilet block. It's not a case of someone coming in has to fix everything. I'm absolutely up for working with people and looking at how we can make that work. But first of all, we need to understand what's needed. I think if I'm brutally honest, DEFA doesn't have camping in its title, and that's probably for good reason. But the reality is that we're focused very much on what government services should be. And for me, campsites aren't the top focus, and they shouldn't be the top focus for government. Our plan here is not to sell this. It's not to have it built on. I absolutely want it to be space that's available for the community to use. And there's a number of options that were explored through the consultation and lots of different ideas. And actually, I think a number of those could be utilised if you did have a community group operating a camping offering. But you could also then have the freedom throughout the day. And one of the key parts of the work we're doing is saying that actually retaining the freedom for the public to access that site is a fundamental part of whatever anyone proposes in terms of the land use.
Is there hopes that we can have something in place before next year's TT?
So certainly the hope would be in advance of next year, but if we weren't able to, then I would look to put something in place for next year as an alternative, as a short-term solution, just as we did this year. So it's not a suggestion that we'll just leave the site unused for next year. That's certainly not my proposal.
Manx Radio Business Briefing.
At 16 minutes before 6, shares in the New York-based office sharing firm WeWork were suspended today after it tumbled on reports it could file for bankruptcy. Last week, the Wall Street Journal reported that WeWork, which was once valued at $47 billion, was set to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy as soon as this week. WeWork said in August there was substantial doubt over its ability to stay in business. At the time, their interim chief exec, David Tolley, warned of excess supply in commercial real estate, increasing competition in flexible space, and macroeconomic volatility and softer demand. And for a full daily market report, remember, go to ramseycrookall.com. Ryanair's reported a jump in profits after pushing up fares after strong demand for summer air travel. The no-frills carrier said passenger numbers rose 11% to a record 105.4 million in the 6 months to September, in spite of average fares rising by 24%. This helped Ryanair to report a near 66% 0% rise in profits for that period to 2.18 billion euros. It's about £1.9 billion. Across the board, airlines have seen a post-COVID surge in demand for flight, and Ryanair set to report record annual profits. The increase in Ryanair fares, which climbed to an average of about €58, about £50, helped them to offset higher fuel costs. Boss Michael O'Leary predicted fares would see mid-teen percentage rises during the last 3 months of 2023 as air capacity across Europe still below pre-COVID levels.
The Stock Market Report, brought to you by Ramsey Crookall.
UK and European markets closed lower as positive momentum from last week stuttered. The US dollar steadied, oil edged up after top exporters Saudi Arabia and Russia reaffirmed their commitment to extra voluntary oil supply cuts, and gold inched lower. The numbers from Ramsey Crookall at the close in London: FTSE 100 flat 7,417. The DAX in Frankfurt down a fraction, third of a percent at 15,135. A short time ago in New York City, the Dow Jones Industrial up a tenth of a percent, 34,095. The Nasdaq Tech Stocks Index up a quarter of a percent at 13,511. The S&P 500 in Chicago up just over a tenth of a percent at 4,363. In the exchange markets, the British pound sterling trading at $1 23.9 cents, €1 15.3 cents, and 22 South African rand 66.4 cents. In commodities, gold's down 0.5% at $1,962 per troy ounce, and a barrel of Brent crude up just over 1 1/10%, $86.10.
You've got an investment plan?
Yeah, Mike set it up.
But don't you need loads of money to do that?
Not this one. It's called Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, and you pay in monthly as little as £100. So it's like saving regularly, really helping us invest in the future. For a house, or the kids' education.
£100 a month? I could easily do that.
You should. The sooner you start, the better.
Invest in your future with as little as £100 a month. Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, the island's investment specialist for 75 years. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Well, it was an election initiative in 2021, but the review of the Manx air services has only just been published, and that appears to have come about after some gentle badgering for it made public from a prominent backbencher. Here's John Moss.
That's after the man who was Infrastructure Minister, Chris Thomas, had said he was putting in a request to Tynwald this month that should happen.
My motion in November calls for the Department for Enterprise to publish the review that was undertaken around the general election time, which makes recommendations about air services, about the routes, about how we should engage with airlines.
So what does this 80-plus page work from Steer, the company, tell us? Well, it's a discussion document charting modern Manx airport use up until 2019. We're told Steer had been commissioned to provide the island with support to develop the Isle of Man's long-term strategy for air services. It sketches out the open skies policy designed in parallel with the EU liberalisation rules on civil aviation to improve competition. That was the idea, and thereby lower fares and improve services. Assessing what's happened during open skies, Steer says passenger levels to and from the island rose steadily between 2011 and 2019 by an average of 2.5, the majority travelling to the northwest of England, to airports in London and the southeast of England. But it adds that numbers travelling to other destinations in the UK reduced from 19 to 9% at the same time, primarily due to reductions in services on these routes. It says open skies led to a decline in the number of different destinations, and equally as important, they say, the frequency of services on some of the most important destinations. What's that resulted in? They say lower frequency on some services, reduced capacity, not satisfying the demand of overall passengers market, limited opportunities to connect to global air networks. The review goes on to spell out what it terms financial levers that are available, such as reduced airport charges as incentives, withdrawal or reduction of APD, air passenger duty. It also looks at the possibility of a Manx airline based on the island. This, it notes, would be by far the most expensive option. So the government, and in particular the sponsoring department, Enterprise, now has its review. What will they do with it? We wait and see.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates. Manx Radio Sport.
Faster my Rhiann Evans.
Faster my good afternoon. Starting in athletics, and Sarah Webster has produced a performance of her athletics career to date and secured the bronze medal at the World 50 Kilometre Championships. She ran a personal best time of 3 hours 20 minutes and 5 seconds, which was less than 2 minutes behind the winner and exactly 1 minute behind the silver medalist. As an added bonus, she was part of the gold medal winning Great Britain team in the women's team event. Sarah wrote on social media afterwards, "Today I ran another 50k. It just happened to be the World 50k Championships in India. Bronze medal, team gold and a PB. I couldn't be more proud to have my first GB vest and perform well for the team." Elsewhere in football, and Erin Sells came off the bench yesterday to score on her debut for Chester FC women's development team. The goal from the teenager in Douglas meant her side drew 1-1 in the Cheshire Women's and Youth League match against leaders Macclesfield FC Women. Both clubs occupy the top 2 spots in the table. Each had won all their previous matches. In the summer, Erin represented the Isle of Man as they won bronze at the Island Games in Guernsey. And in netball, the first ever netball Inter-Island Games gets underway tomorrow. The Isle of Man's first match will be against Guernsey at 6 p.m. at the NSC. Over the week, the home side will also take on Inismon, Shetland, Orkney and Jersey. Tickets are available for the event by the Isle of Man Netball Facebook page.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Cautiously looking okay at Ronald's Way. Inbound next is the 7:30 EasyJet from London Gatwick on time. The 10 to 8 Loganair from London City on time, and then the 5 to 8 Loganair from Liverpool showing inbound on time. Outbound 6 o'clock Loganair to Liverpool's delayed until 6:15. They're hoping to catch that time up later on. And then outbound it's the 8 o'clock EasyJet to London Gatwick. Hooray! DOI's announced the Newcastle town reopens at 6:30 this evening. There will be some resurfacing to do and there'll be temporary lights in place for a few days. Hillside Avenue Douglas closed for adjacent office window replacement. Temporary lights on Glen Crutchery Road at the Victoria Road roundabout for resurfacing. A section of Switzerland Road's closed for construction work. Bretney Close in Jerby, well, part of it's closed for some construction work. And temporary lights at the junction of Queen's Road and Park Road, Port St Mary for gas main work. Queen Street, Castletown's closed for resurfacing, and in Peel, temporary lights on Peveril Road for resurfacing, and Queen's Drive, Peel, for patching works. Old Laxey Hills closed for excavation work. I would tell you about the Mountain Road. Unfortunately, the matrix signs aren't connected, so the DOI is just getting that technology together.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre with 1 year's free engine warranty from Castrol. Get more with
Quayside. Extra pressure being felt across the health service is only going to increase as the winter month arrives. So says Manx Care's Operations Director Oliver Radford, who warns the cost of living crisis will have an impact on Manx people's health.
Since the previous deep dive, the risk has been upgraded to recognise the increasing frequency of extreme pressure being experienced across the entire health and care system. So whilst Nobles has had the Opal score in place for a couple of years now, so we are able to track that rating on a day-by-day or week-by-week basis. Similar pressures are being felt across the system, whether that's primary care, community, ambulance service or social care. In particular, we have seen this year an unseasonable rise in unplanned demand across all of our system, with ED attendance in July of this year being the busiest month on record. So we're not alone. We're seeing seeing this rise in demand, with ambulance services in the UK seeing record levels of demand also in July 2023. And as we move into the winter period, this is only going to increase as people close windows, move inside, and the risk of transmission of respiratory and other illnesses increases. Also, as we move into the second year of the cost of living crisis, the most vulnerable in our society will yet again need to choose between heating their home and eating healthily, with either sacrifice likely to result in the need to access health or care services.
Update, brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300.
Potential changes to work permit legislation on the island need further scrutiny and have been dubbed contentious. The Speaker of the House of Keys has activated a rarely used Tynwald protocol in a bid to ensure politicians properly assess the legislation. Juan Watterson says the proposal, which will see work permits temporarily suspended, needs proper debate.
We've been constantly reviewing the standing orders of Tynwald since I've been Speaker, and there's been a number of changes, things such as the register of business to give members more notice of what's coming down the tracks, to allow more time to read all the secondary legislation coming through, because back when I started you only got 2 weeks to read absolutely everything, and that just wasn't enough. So now there is more time allowed for that, but it also allows us to, these 2021 changes allow us to pick things up and say, hang on a second, this a far bigger import, and provided that it's not done under an urgency procedure, it means that if sufficient numbers support it, it can just be slowed down a gear, taken through the branches potentially, or even just moved up the order paper, just so that members will be able to flag that this is something that just requires a little bit more thought than a lot of the other regulations that we deal with on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis in Tynwald. I mean, I'm so open-minded as to whether it's something that I would vote for. It's something I can certainly see both sides of the argument on. I can see how it would help employers on the one hand and reduce bureaucracy, which what's not to like about that, but then also to think about what sort of secondary impacts there are for this that perhaps haven't been thought through, and that might not have come out strongly in the consultation, which was very much responded to by businesses, but in terms of the other social, economic and other aspects of and implications of lifting those regulations, what's that going to mean? So I think there's some more investigation to be done on this particular topic, and that's why I've flagged them for a little bit of further scrutiny from Tynwald in the coming weeks.
That's it for Update Tonight, brought to you from the resources of Manx Radio's news department. Thanks to newsreader Chanel Suku, producer Amy Griffiths. Phil Gaun's here with Agenda after 6, and I'm back tomorrow at 5:30.
WINT